So what if I told you that a perfectly logical, mathematically flawless argument is actually the absolute easiest way to lie to you?
Oh man. That is that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people.
Right. I mean, just think about how you consume information today. You're scrolling through your feed, you see a viral video, or maybe you read a headline claiming that, like, some new study links drinking coffee to rapid weight loss.
Oh, the classic coffee studies. Always coffee.
Always the coffee, and you immediately feel that familiar anxiety, right? Like, is this true? Is this manipulated? Am I being played here?
Yeah, you feel it in your gut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We are all just swimming in this relentless ocean of data and trying to test every single drop of water to see if it's poison I mean, it's just exhausting.
It's completely paralyzing because, you are trying to verify an infinite amount of content.
Right.
When you're looking at that coffee study or that viral video, you are entirely focused on the water itself, the
Yeah.
message.
Just the liquid.
Right. And when you only look at the water, you're playing a game that you are statistically guaranteed to lose. I mean, the sheer volume of synthetic content being produced today makes content verification basically impossible.
Which brings us to the core of this deep dive. We're looking at a really fascinating set of source documents today that outline something called the architecture of meaning and the RP9 model.
Yeah, this is a great framework.
It really is. And the mission for this conversation is to shift you, the listener, from being a stressed out, passive consumer of all this information into what the texts call a master architect of meaning.
I love that term. And to become that architect, you have to stop looking at the water and you have to start looking at the plumbing.
Okay, the plumbing. Break that down for us.
Well, we usually focus on the content of information because honestly, it's loud, right? It's emotional and it's right in our faces.
It's designed to grab us.
Exactly. But content is incredibly fragile. It's easily manipulated, synthesized, and distorted by, well, pretty much anyone with an agenda and a keyboard.
Yeah, that's the scary part.
It is. So the true secret to understanding information and protecting yourself from manipulation is looking at the invisible structure that makes the transmission of that data possible in the first place.
Okay, I want to make this really concrete for everyone listening. To audit this invisible plumbing, we kind of have to know what the pipes are actually made of, right?
It's huge.
So the sources argue that for information to simply exist, like before we even ask if it's true or false, there are three absolute invariant conditions.
The three pillars.
The three pillars, exactly. And if you don't have these, you don't have a lie, you don't have the truth, you just have a void.
Right. So the first of these pillars is distinction. There has to be a difference between at least two states.
Just two distinct things.
Yeah, think about it. If there is no difference between this and that, you just have a uniform blur.
Nothing to grab onto.
Exactly. There are no separate states to know. So distinction is the absolute baseline of reality. If a news article claims an event happened, it must distinguish between the state of the world before the event and the state of the world after.
Right, which is the classic, the not void test from the text.
Yes, the not void test.
And then once you have those distinct things, you need the second pillar, which is relation.
Right.
There must be a defined connection between these states. Because if you just have two different things floating in an abyss with no connection, they just exist in total isolation.
They don't mean anything to each other.
Exactly. So let's go back to that hypothetical headline, right? Drinking coffee leads to weight loss. The distinction is coffee versus no coffee and weight loss versus no weight loss.
Right. Those are your states.
And the relation is the supposed causal link between drinking the coffee and dropping the pounds.
Which brings us to the third and honestly the most crucial pillar, which is structure.
Structure.
Structure is the map. It's the framework that defines exactly what relations are allowed to exist and what changes or transformations are possible between those distinct states.
The sources use a really fantastic analogy for this. They compare structure to a board game or like a musical scale.
Oh, I love the chess analogy.
Yeah, the chess one is great because the rules of chess, for example, they don't tell you exactly which move you have to make, right?
No, you can play a million different games.
Right. But they define the absolute limits of every move you can make. They define what the text calls the possibility space.
Yes.
Or, a musical scale doesn't write the melody for you, but it dictates which notes can actually relate to one another to form a harmony instead of just noise.
And that concept of the possibility space is vital because these three pillars, distinction, relation, structure, they are invariant.
Invariant meaning they never change.
Right. They do not change depending on your culture, your politics, or your mood. If you remove even one of them, the entire building of meaning just collapses into static. You simply cannot communicate without them. They form the strict, unyielding boundaries of what is even possible to transmit from one human mind to another.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more because I'm looking at this possibility space concept. And there is a jarring realization in the text that, honestly, it kind of threw me when I first read it.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, this pristine mathematical structure, this beautiful plumbing, it doesn't care about truth at all.
Not even a little bit.
It's wild.
It is. We all walk around with this deep-seated, totally flawed assumption that knowledge equals truth. We assume that if something is logically structured, it must be true.
Right, if it makes sense, it's a fact.
Exactly. But the architecture of meaning is entirely neutral.
The sources use a really striking analogy here. They say the pipes carry clean drinking water and raw sewage equally.
Yes.
The pipe doesn't care what is flowing through it. It's just doing its job of transmission.
The text argues that truth is merely an outcome that can be achieved within a valid structure. Truth is not a requirement for the structure to exist.
That's a huge distinction.
It really is. A lie requires distinction, relation, and structure just as much as a true statement does.
Okay, wait, hold on. This is where I struggle with the material.
Okay, let's hear it.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. If a manipulator like someone trying to feed me a completely fabricated synthetic reality, like a deepfake video or a completely fraudulent scientific study, if they get to use the exact same structural tools as an honest scientist, doesn't that make manipulation incredibly powerful?
I see where you're going with this.
Right. Doesn't that mean we are totally defenseless? You're telling me a bad actor can use the exact same logic as a truth teller, and the structure doesn't care?
It sounds terrifying at first, I know. But this is actually the source of your greatest power as an information consumer.
How so?
The text calls this the manipulation paradox. Yes, a bad actor can alter the content, they can shift the representation, they can twist the interpretation.
Right, they can lie.
But they cannot break the rules of the game. They are trapped. To manipulate data, they still absolutely must use the invariant rules of distinction, relation, and transformation.
But if they are using the truth's own framework against me, how is that empowering? It feels like they have the ultimate camouflage.
Because they can't opt out of the physics of meaning. They are confined within the exact same structural possibility space as the truth.
Oh, I see.
And this is the vital shift for you, the listener. If you spend all your energy arguing about the content, the manipulator can just keep changing the shape of the water.
They just deflect.
Exactly. They can say, well, look at this other angle of the video, or read this other quote out of context. But if you learn to audit the structure, if you look at the invariant rules they are forced to use to build their lie, you strip away their power.
Okay, give me a real-world example of how I actually do that. Because abstractly, auditing the structure sounds great, but I'm just a person scrolling through my phone.
Sure. Let's say you see a viral post claiming a specific dietary supplement cures a complex disease.
Happens all the time.
Right. If you argue the content, you are suddenly bogged down in a million medical terms you don't understand, debating anecdotal evidence in the comments.
You're drowning in the water.
You're drowning in the water. But if you audit the structure, you ask, what is the distinction here? Is the cure clearly defined, or is it a blurry emotional concept like wellness?
Right. Wellness is a blur.
Exactly. Then you ask, what is the relation? Did they define how the supplement transforms the cells? Or are they just putting two isolated facts next to each other and hoping you assume a connection?
The old correlation does not imply causation thing.
Yes. By forcing their claim to map onto the three pillars, the lie usually falls apart before you even have to fact-check the medical data.
Okay, I see that. By forcing them to show their work on the basic physics of their argument, the flimsy ones just collapse.
They do.
But what about the really good lies? I mean, if the pipes carry both truth and lies using the exact same basic structure, how do we actually filter out the high-quality sewage?
That's the million-dollar question.
The text says we have to upgrade. We have to elevate from basic information to a stricter, more rigorous standard called knowledge.
Yes. Basic information is just the transmission of data. It only requires those first three pillars to exist. It's a very low bar.
So basically anything can be information.
Pretty much. A well-written fictional novel is technically information, but functional knowledge. That requires the system to survive intense internal stress tests designed to eliminate luck, randomness, and chaos.
And the sources lay out two massive stress tests to elevate information to knowledge. First is reproducibility.
And this isn't just a science lab term here.
Right. The text defines it as doing the same operation within the structure must yield the same result every single time. If it doesn't, you don't have knowledge. You just have a coincidence.
Let's use your coffee and weight loss example.
Perfect.
If the study says drinking a cup of coffee, which we'll call state X, and applying the human metabolism transformation, Y equals a loss of 1 pound result, Z reproducibility means taking that exact same structural operation and seeing if it happens again.
And if it doesn't?
If someone else drinks the coffee and they gain weight or nothing happens, the structure is unstable. The result isn't an invariant property of the system. It's just a variable dependent on whoever happens to be looking at it. It's a fluke.
And the second stress test is consistency. The system cannot contradict itself. The structure cannot allow state A and not A to exist at the exact same time.
Right, that's a structural collapse.
If it allows self-contradiction, the logic is gone. Like, if the study claims the coffee works by suppressing appetite, but the data shows the participants ate 500 more calories a day, the system allows A and not A simultaneously.
It fails the consistency test.
Exactly.
Exactly. When information passes reproducibility and consistency, we start moving toward functional knowledge.
Okay, I want to pause here because logically, this kind of feels like the finish line to me.
It does to most people.
Right. If I'm looking at a piece of data, a claim, a news report, a study, and it has clear distinctions, clear relations, and it is perfectly internally consistent and totally reproducible, doesn't that mean it's undeniably true? Have we reached validated knowledge?
No.
No.
No. And this is the most profound twist in the entire framework. Internal consistency is very often mistaken for truth because human beings fundamentally love patterns. We crave them.
We want things to make sense.
We do. But internal consistency is deeply insufficient. A system can be perfectly coherent, highly reproducible, perfectly structured, and still be fundamentally completely false.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. How can a perfectly consistent, reproducible system be a lie? If the math works every time, isn't it true?
It can be a lie because of the most dangerous type of manipulation described in the sources. They call it the projection.
The projection.
Projection is an imposter structure. It has been brilliantly engineered to look right and behave right. It is flawlessly internally consistent. But it hasn't actually grown from the data. It has been artificially bolted onto the data after the fact to create a specific desired outcome.
So it's essentially a reverse-engineered lie.
Yes.
Let me try an analogy to picture this. Think about a master art forger trying to sell a fake 17th century painting.
Okay, I like that.
They don't just use cheap modern materials, right?
Yeah.
They know you're going to run stress tests. So the paint they mix is chemically accurate for the 1600s. That's your consistency.
Right.
The canvas they paint on was genuinely woven in the 17th century. That's your reproducibility. If an appraiser just runs basic internal stress tests on the painting, it passes. The chemistry works. The math works. It looks perfectly right.
But it's still a massive lie.
Exactly. Because it lacks the true lineage of the original artist.
That is an excellent analogy. The painting is internally consistent, but it is structurally bankrupt. And this brings us to the ultimate filter. Now, the framework we're discussing is called the RP9 model, which is a 9-step criteria for validating data. We've covered the baseline plumbing, but we are actually going to skip over steps 4 and 5 today to get straight to the absolute crown jewel of the model condition 6, derivation.
Derivation. In the original Swedish texts, it's called herledning.
Yes.
And following the painting analogy, this is the audit of ancestry.
It is not enough for a claim to just work. It is not enough for a structure to just be consistent. To achieve true validated knowledge, a result must be formally proven to have legitimately originated from its foundational structure. You have to trace its birth.
So what does this all mean? The text uses the phrase legitimate structural emergence. What does that actually mean for the listener sitting at home?
Well, in plain English, it means you have to prove exactly where the data came from, step by step, without any magical leaps.
Good.
If an AI generates a flawlessly written article about a historical event that never happened, that article might pass the consistency test. It has no grammatical errors, the dates line up, the geography makes sense.
It looks real.
But if you demand derivation, if you audit the ancestry of those claims, you find there are no primary sources. The facts did not emerge from reality. They were projected downward onto the page by a language model trained to mimic the structure of truth.
Wow.
If you cannot prove its correct structural birth, it is just a well-formed fluke. It is a projection.
We are living in an era where synthetic, content, deepfakes, perfectly crafted disinformation campaigns, they can easily pass the test of internal consistency.
Easily.
They're quite literally designed by algorithms to be perfectly coherent.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is why the RP9 model introduces what we could call the absolute clause. In a world where content can be infinitely manipulated, internal stability is no longer enough to protect you.
It's just not enough anymore.
We have to demand proof of derivation. You cannot just accept that the math checks out. You have to prove why those specific mathematical rules were the necessary ones to use in the first place. Validity isn't found in the appearance of the result. It is found in the necessity of its origin.
Let's apply derivation back to the real world. Let's say you see a beautifully produced documentary exposing a massive conspiracy.
Oh, we've all seen those.
Right. It has a timeline. It has charts. It is highly consistent. The traditional fact-checking instinct is to Google the specific claims to test the water.
Which is exhausting.
Exactly. But auditing the ancestry means asking, how was this documentary built? Did the conclusions naturally emerge from raw, undisputed documents? Or did the filmmakers start with the conclusion of the conspiracy and selectively gather only the facts that fit, bolting them onto an imposter structure?
When you ask that question, you are auditing the derivation. You are looking for the projection. A projector starts with the outcome they want and reverse engineers a highly consistent, reproducible structure to justify it.
And what does a master architect do?
A true master architect starts with the invariant pillars and follows them wherever they lead, regardless of the outcome.
This completely changes the way I want to look at my newsfeed tomorrow. It shifts the burden. I no longer have to be an expert in epidemiology or global economics or AI programming to spot a bad claim.
No, you don't.
I just have to be an expert in the plumbing.
And that is a totally achievable goal. Let's assemble the Master Architect Toolkit for you, the listener. The goal here is to stop getting swept away by the overwhelming content and start demanding structural integrity. When you are faced with a complex claim, a viral narrative, or an argument that makes you feel anxious, run the checklist.
Okay, step one. Are there clear distinctions? Are they actually identifying separate observable states or just feeding you a blurry, emotionally manipulative concept?
Right.
If they can't define the difference between state A and state B, stop there. The pipe is broken.
Step two, are the relations defined? How do these distinct things actually connect? Is there a causal link or just two things sitting next to each other?
Like the correlation versus causation thing again.
Exactly. Step three, what is the structure? What is the possibility space they are operating in? What are the rules of the game they are asking you to play?
Then you move past basic information and run the stress tests for knowledge. Is it consistent, or does the argument secretly contradict itself if you apply it universally?
Question.
Is it reproducible, or is it just a one-off emotional anecdote parading as a universal rule?
And finally, you apply the ultimate filter, derivation, the audit of ancestry.
The big one.
Did this conclusion legitimately grow from its foundational structure, step by step? Or is it a projection? Is it a forged painting using chemically accurate paint, but bolted onto reality after the fact to sell you a lie?
The highest value in logic, the true mark of a master architect, isn't the ability to spot a single lie on a Tuesday.
No, it's bigger than that.
It's the ability to see the invisible lines, the structure, that makes both the truth and the lie possible. When you can see the boundaries of the possibility space, you dictate the terms of engagement. You control how you consume the world rather than letting the world consume you.
By focusing on the invariant conditions of meaning, you make yourself immune to the noise of the content. You realize that while a manipulator can change the story infinite times, they only have one set of tools to build it. Learn the tools, and you disarm them.
That is an incredibly empowering way to view our information landscape. But I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought, something for you to mull over on your own that built on this architecture we've just laid out.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've established today that truth is just an outcome of a valid, perfectly derived structure, and that the structure itself is completely neutral. It's just math. It's just plumbing.
Right. It has no inherent moral compass. It doesn't know what it's carrying.
So what happens when we eventually create complex artificial intelligences that are capable of inventing their own entirely novel possibility spaces?
Oh, wow.
What happens when an AI builds a structural framework that has flawless distinction, flawless relation, perfect structure, total consistency, absolute reproducibility, and perfectly legitimate derivation? But it has absolutely zero connection to human reality.
That's wild.
Could we one day possess perfect, mathematically flawless, knowledge of a structure that is entirely alien to our physical world.
A perfectly derived invariant structure of absolute nonsense.
Exactly. It makes you realize that while auditing the plumbing will save you from the flood, you still have to decide what kind of ocean you actually want to swim in.